Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Charlie Deakin-Davies. Is it Davies or Davis?
Davies.
Davies. Okay. My guest today is Charlie Deakin-Davies. Charlie is a pop/indie record songwriter, producer, and artist. Based out of 1087 Studios in Tottenham Hale, Charlie has worked with such acts as Laura Marling, Gary Barlow, Dodie, James Bay, and like many, many more, and is the winner of the PSN Award for Breakthrough Studio Engineer, as well as for the second year in a row, NMG's Producer of the Year Award. Former guest of the show, Rooks, recommended I reach out to Charlie, and I see that they are in Rooks Studio as well. So familiar places and new faces. Charlie agreed to come on the air. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Charlie.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, I'd love to learn a bit more about you. Tell me about your story. Like, how did you get to do all the things that you're doing today? I know you're also touring as well as producing, songwriting. How did it all begin for you?
To be honest, I feel like it started how it does for most people, which is basically I was in a band and the band did pretty all right, and it inspired me to like want to get into the studio. And like quite early on, we started working with Island Records, which is a label.
Very big label.
I was like 16 at the time. And we got to go in these like mad recording studios, and I was like, this is so cool. And I was the annoying one over the shoulder of the engineer, like go like, what does this button do? What does this button do? And then it made me realize that you could do so much more with songwriting, doing music production. And so that just is what really like was the catalyst for me to be like, I want to be a record producer and songwriter.
Yeah, it's like exciting to see all that stuff, especially as a young kid. I remember the first time I was in a recording studio, I was just like, this is like, I didn't even have the thought process to just go in there and see what's going on. It was just in awe of the process of like what it is,
Yeah, completely. Well, I just think the reality is it's like a tool for creation, and it's like you can use it however you want. I think it was quite difficult starting out in some ways because people had such strong ideas of what they think it should be. But as you get in it and start using it yourself, you realize like, nah, I'm just going to do whatever I want.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing, that technology has become so accessible to anybody, right? Like anyone could just buy a Focusrite interface and a laptop. It gets started. You don't really need much more to start playing. And then, I started with like a Zoom H4n, like handy mic, and so
Yeah.
whatever it was, or whatever it is for whoever's coming up.
Literally, I mean, I work with like loads of big up and coming artists, and all of them just record on Focusrites, like straight into their laptops, and they're the people that I'm doing all these massive tours with, and their tracks are literally charting and everything. So it's just like,
Amazing.
yeah, it's just about there's just a different combination of things that matter, but you don't have to have the best equipment, but you do kind of have to know to use what you've got.
That is true. So tell me a bit about like how you got good at what you're doing. Did you have any mentors along the way? Was it all self-taught? What was that like period like?
I mean, I had a lot of really amazing opportunities. Most of the things that I did is through the capacity of being in a band, and that really opened my eyes and opened a lot of doors to meeting cool people. But one of them was like when I was 17, there was this studio owner that really believed in me, Martin Lumsden. And he hired me when I was 17 to work as a producer at the studio, to work with one of the artists that he'd got in. And from that point, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I turned the shed in the bottom of the garden into a studio, and I just started recording people from that point onwards. I wouldn't say I had like a mentor or someone I looked up to for practically the whole of my career. I didn't say so. I still don't know anyone that is like me. I don't know a single non-binary record producer that hasn't been part of my network, if that makes sense. Like I'm the first one that I know of.
Wow.
So, and maybe there is so
So
many more.
You're a trailblazer.
I didn't mean it like that, but like, yeah, the reality is like there was no female record producers that I knew of, and then on top of that, there's no non-binary ones, and there was no openly gay ones. So it was very much like just doing my own thing and just
Yeah.
having a good time.
Well, it's good that people get to see other people, people that they wouldn't have seen, 10, 15 years ago now, because it's all out there, right? Or it's starting to be. There's not enough, but I mean, I'm trying to like push forward some of those faces, but it's difficult because there's not that many, right?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is there are so many aspiring, but I think to get the thing that actually tips you over the edge is quite hard, and it takes someone taking a risk on you.
Mm.
And I was really lucky. I had a lot of people take a punt on me. I mean, the second thing I ever produced got played on radio too. So like that,
You
and I was
just
like
struck
18.
gold.
Yeah, like I was just so lucky really early on. And I had a lot of support early on from like my mum, and I think that's this kind of stuff that has made quite a big difference
How are
to
you able to get things charting your second go about? Like, like that's crazy to me. Like, I don't think I've had anything that's really charted, and I've been at this for like more than a decade. Like, how did that happen for you?
Well, I guess the Radio 2 play was kind of a fluke because I recorded my first ever EP for someone, and I did it for free. And we met them at like an open mic at a folk club. And then the next person was like this other person we met at a folk club. And then I was like, oh, well, here's proof of that I know how to record. Um, I'll do an EP for you for £10 a song if you want. And so I charged her £50 for me to mix, produce, master an EP. I also did the artwork as well for £50.
How long did you spend on this project?
I literally don't know. The thing is, I was doing nothing else. I got kicked out of school when I was 17, so I just kind of just started doing music as my thing. Um, I don't know. Maybe I honestly tops a week working on this EP because it was like an acoustic folk EP and it was really nice.
Mm,
But one of the tracks that was on that got played on radio too, and then that meant at like 18, I was already a producer that had a track on radio too, and so that then like really solidified me as a producer and it solidified a lot of confidence in myself. And then I carried on doing tracks. I mean, I think I released like 100 tracks by the time I was like 21, like that I'd mixed and produced, or written, or something within that. And it's just I didn't know anything different. I just thought that's what everyone did. Um,
right.
but I just
That's
yeah.
amazing. You just like were in your own little bubble and you were able to kind of just push forward and push through. You didn't even have the imposter syndrome to like stop you from doing stuff. Like I
I
feel
think
like
I'm too naive to have imposter syndrome.
what? Sorry?
I think I was too naive to have
Right.
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, yeah. There's like this golden period of like naivety before you get the imposter syndrome. And that's like a great it sounds like you used that well. That time
Oh my
period
god,
well.
I have the imposter syndrome is crippling now. It's bad.
Really? Really? Even
Yeah,
after all those successes.
I'm the least confident in my music production now than I've ever been in my entire life. It's mad.
How has that happened?
I don't know if it's one of those things, you know, when they say about like gifted and talented children and then they like really struggle when they get older. I feel like I had that a bit with my career because I just won like loads of awards. I like stuff, I had like award-winning albums. I had like all of this stuff, and most of this happened before I was 22. And it happened, and a lot of it happened when I was like 19, 20. So I had such a like, oh my God, I love this and I'm really good at it. And then as time went on, I I don't know, it changed. But I mean, I started working for Gary Barlow when I was 23 as his private writer producer and like and songwriter
Wow.
for 2 years. So I'm only 27 now. So I've been only been out for a year and a half. But I don't know. It's just really weird.
Maybe it's like as you get better, you realize what your real weaknesses are, Like when you're naive and you're just starting, it's like, oh, this is amazing. And there's something so powerful about that. But as you kind of learn what your strengths are and your weaknesses are, and then you start to like, as human beings, we somehow put a magnifying glass on the things that we're less good at and are, or like, I don't know, in therapy, like things that you feel guilty about versus the things you feel good about yourself about, those kinds of things. Like, maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think also like previously, although the music I had been producing had been on Radio 1, Radio 2, 6, like all of these other things, I still felt like when I then started working for Gary and then I started working for like proper major label artists, that's when I was like, I see the gaps in my skill set now. And because I had no training, I had no mentor. Like Gary Barlow was effectively my first mentor. Um, and that's quite a steep learning curve to go from like it was just the biggest, I think it was the biggest moment of my life, from big fish, tiny pond to absolute ocean and I'm a shrimp. Like it's like how extreme working for him felt for me. And then the
Wow.
pandemic hit halfway through that as well. So it was just everything was just so weird.
What was I wanted to ask you about working with Gary Barlow? How did that happen? What was it like working with him? Was it? I guess I'm assuming it was probably intimidating at first, right? Like, what was that like? What was that like?
Well, I think because I was quite confident starting, I was never really intimidated by him. I think I actually got intimidated by him like maybe like a year in. Like I think it took a while. Um, but I got the job with him because in 2018 I won quite a few awards, and then one of the awards that I won was the European Pro Sound Award for Breakthrough Studio Engineer of the Year. And at that award show, there was this amazing producer called Fraser T. Smith, who I'm sure you might know. Do you know?
I'll look them up.
Oh
Fraser,
my God, Fraser T. Smith. I mean, he's just done like
English record producer.
yeah, he's just done loads of all the Stormzy stuff, Adele, Ellie
Oh,
Goulding.
oh yeah. Okay. Amazing.
Yeah,
He looks familiar.
yeah, he's so good. But he won like Best Producer Ever award at the same award show. And
So you're
then
like
I
on the floor mat, whatever kind of thing
yeah,
with.
literally I won like the lowest rung award you could win of the night. But me and him were the only people that gave speeches. We like, and I think he liked that, so he came and spoke to me afterwards. And he invited me to his studio. And then it turned out that my friend Manon Gorgine was his
Mm.
engineer. And
Oh yeah.
then
I've heard great things
and
about her.
then oh, Manon is incredible. Oh my
Apparently
God, I love
an
her.
amazing mixer.
Oh yeah, that's her thing. Like,
Yeah.
mm, mm. But yeah, so basically what happened was Fraser was writing and producing Craig David's album, and Gary Barlow is one of the co-producer writer people. And Gary asked Manon if she knew any producers that were songwriters that played guitar and used Logic. And then she was like, "Oh yeah, I know someone who would be good for that." And then she put me in contact, and then I did the interview on the Friday, and then I got the job on the Monday. Then I was in the studio with Gary and Craig David on the Tuesday. It was mad.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I just did that for 2 years. He built me a studio inside his studio next to him. It is mad.
Nice. That's amazing.
Mm.
So working with him like on a day-to-day basis? Like what did that involve?
Well, he was a like avid writer. So he would write a song every day. He used to get in the studio at like 8 a.m. and then we would get in at 10. And so he would have 2 hours in the morning to himself just to write. Um, but yeah, we had like a little factory system going because there was Brian Carline, who's an incredible mix engineer, and he's been Gary's mix engineer forever, and just like producer as well. He's an amazing producer and keys player. And he was downstairs in the big studio, and then on the next floor up, he had Gary's studio, and he had his production room, and then I had my production room on the same floor as him, literally right next to him. And then on the top floor, we had Dan Keane, and he was specialized in orchestral arrangements. So what would happen was Gary would send a track out. It would then get sent to me and Dan, and then I'd put all the guitars and bass on because I was like hired as sort of a guitarist, bassist, songwritery kind of thing. Any ad prod that I thought was like a good idea, and then Dan would add his thing, and then it gets sent to Ryan, and then he would combine it together and mix it, and then send it back to Gary. So it was like quite a system. I mean, we did
Wow.
a whole album like that. Yeah,
How long did it take to do a song? Like a day? It was like a day, like a song a day kind of thing, including the production and the
yeah,
mixing?
sometimes less. Like
And were
it
these
was really
all Gary's original songs, or is he's writing also for other people? I'm assuming.
a mix of everything. Like Gary is really prolific at doing a lot of different things. So it was really cool working on such a variety of artists.
Wow, that's crazy. Wait, so jumping forward, these days you're freelance, like you're also a musician, but you're also a songwriter, you're also a producer. What is it? What does like the day to day like breakdown look like?
Who am I? Um,
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out here on the podcast.
honestly. Well, I've had a bit of a weird year actually because I inadvertently fell into being a musical director and backline tech and playback tech.
Yeah.
So I just built a couple of shows for a few people. And the people I built shows for were Piri and Tommy, Venby, and Ellie Dixon. I don't know if you know any of them, but they're all incredible. But the specific kind of way I got brought in was I was friends with Venby and I was friends with Ellie because we've known each other from the before times. But effectively, all of them had gone viral on TikTok. And suddenly they were being booked for pretty big shows and they all got signed to major record labels, but they didn't really have any experience doing shows in front of hundreds, if not thousands, if not 10,000s of people.
Oh my God.
And I kind of do. And I have experience from like building shows and everything from all my experience of being in a band. And then being a record producer and a songwriter and a musician meant I could quite easily chameleon into like working out how to make a really good live show and how to make it fun, how to make it dynamic. And so I ended up touring with all three of them through since the spring up until a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago now. So yeah, I ended up just being a musical director all year, which
Wow.
has left very ill.
Yeah, I'm sure. Touring is hard. I
I'm
haven't
not
done.
cut out for that type of touring.
I've done about 2 weeks of touring, and it was rough. You know, just a lot of schlepping, a lot of not sleeping enough, and cramming on airplanes and buses and stuff.
It's because the hours, like, I mean, like on the last day of tour, we had just done a show in Paris the night before. Then we woke up in Paris, flew to Manchester, did an afternoon show. So bearing in mind, the Paris show was like it's this like private, small club giggy thing, and that was to 150 people. Then we flew to Manchester and then played in front of 10,000 people. So
Jeez.
it's like, and then I had to then get back to London that night, and then I had rehearsals the next day, like with the next artist. It was just like, but after and then I was on tour with Ellie, and as soon as I came off tour with Ellie, I was building Piri and Tommy's show, and then I toured it like with no break. So it was just like, and then when I came off that tour,
It sounds exhilarating, though, I have to say.
oh god, I wish it was. I think after the Ellie tour, I was in like such a high, and then I was just I can't hack this anymore. Like, it'd be my 5th tour of the year. I was just like, anyway, other people can hack it, but I like making. That's what I like doing. I like making things.
So you're gonna step out of the MD life.
Well, I'm gonna step out of the backline tech and playback tech role, but I'm still hired to build everyone's shows next year because they've all got. I mean, like the first gig I did with Piri and Tommy at the start of the year was to 50 people in Birmingham, and the last gig I did with them was to 10,000 people. So it's like the level. I mean, like in the
You're watching these artists just blow up.
Yeah,
You know,
like Fendi as well.
tagging along for the ride, also. You know.
Yeah, I mean the really funny thing about the Venby and Piri and Tommy is Venby was like I knew her from before she was Venby, like she'd released some other music. And then we'd been friends for like a couple of years or like a year by that point or something. And then I got put on to the Piri and Tommy job through basically my management, and I didn't know them personally. And then I was on their tour, and then Venby rang me and was like, "Oh, like I've never done a live show before, and I've just been put on a couple of these dates supporting this band. You know, could you help me build my live show? Like, I really need some help." And then I was like, "Oh, what are the dates?" And they said the dates, and I was like, "Oh man, like they're exactly the dates that I'm on tour with Piri and Tommy, so I can't do it." And then she was like, "Wait, what? Are you doing the Piri and Tommy tour?" And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "I'm the support act. I've been booked onto the Piri and Tommy tour." Like, what are the chances? And this is before
That's
she'd
amazing.
released literally anything. Like she had nothing out. And then during that time, she released Lowdown, which ended up being like a massive viral hit. So I was the musical director for all of the artists on that tour. Which that was just like the first thing I did of the year. Like,
All right, that sounds amazing. Hopefully, you pocketed some cash that you can spend on some recording gear or something, or pay rent or whatever.
I'm gonna be real. I earn more money as a record producer than a musical director. It's really ridiculous, even though it's like so many more days' work. Like, it's just you end up, you know what it is? You end up buying loads of food. I'm not even joking. Like, you spend like 30 to 40 quid a day on food, and it just cuts in so heavily into your budget.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, listen, you're on the road and you're hungry, and there's the hotel doesn't exactly have all the food you need. So
yeah, exactly.
what are you gonna do?
But
that's wild.
It's been fun though. And then after that, I toured with Ellie around Europe, and then I did festival season with all three of them. Like, it was such a funny mix and match of them, like which ones they were both playing the same day, and like there were times where like they were literally one after another. So that felt good. And then then I did an Ellie European UK tour, and then I did Piri and Tommy European UK and European tour. I just came off.
Wow. Well, congrats. So
Thanks.
now it's back to making music.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, and that's why I was late to the school because I've just decided to make a drum and bass and jungle EP, and I just did 4 tracks in like I started at 3, and then we started at 6:50. So how many hours is that? That's
Like
like
3.5 plus.
yeah. So I did 4 tracks. I'm quite happy about.
All right. Well, you'll have to send me them after our chat so I can hear
They're
them.
terrible, but they exist.
But we can also we can fix them later because that's what we do. Wait, so
Yeah,
given all the touring history and all the MD stuff, like, is there any takeaways that you think you're going to be applying now into the studio? Like any thoughts coming off the tour that was like,
oh
hey, this is something I want to do now.
yeah. I mean, the reason why this EP that I've even just made exists is because I now have just like all the artists I was touring with, except for Ellie, was slightly different genre to what I usually work with, and I feel very inspired in like the drum and bass jungle stuff that they've all been touring with, and it's so on a massive rise at the moment, and it's just a lot of fun. It's really hype. Like it translates so well live as well. So I just wanted to stick my oar in and have a go, really. And it's really fun.
Amazing. Wait, so these days, in terms of like working with artists, producing them, songwriting with them, how do artists find you, or how do you find them? How do you find the people that you want to collaborate with?
Combination. I have management, so they often find me clients. After Gary Barlow, I was mentored by Fred again. I don't know if you know Fred again.
Fred again.
Yeah, he's
Let's
he's
just keep opening up tabs here. Fred again.
Fred again's like
Uh-huh.
massive. Um,
Okay, cool.
yeah. But yeah, I was mentored by him for a year, for part of this program, and that really it got me into a space. But then at the end of that program, I just got introduced to like every single major record label. Um, so then I now just work with like people that A&Rs put me in touch with. And then on top of that, I really like working with independent artists. It's just finding the time because often what I find, and it's wonderful and I love it, but I really have to really carve out time for independent artists because when you are used to working with major record label artists, they're a bit faster and they know what they want. And so you can get a song done in a day with major record label artists. With an
Mm,
independent artist who's never been in the studio before, it can take up to 3 days just to get one song like over the finish line. So and obviously I don't get paid anywhere near as much to work with indie
right.
artists. It
Once you kind of stepped into one field, it's hard to kind of go to the other one.
Yeah, so I found myself working with less independent artists, but only just because I've been touring and I haven't really had time. But like, I don't know, I love seeing new music come through. I just worked with this artist called Milena, and I did her track 17 at 19. And that I've really loved the production that we did on that. That was a lot of fun. I really like building soundscapes. Like my background is in folk alternative, so like that's what I like. But I've just ended up falling so heavily into pop, which is kind of funny, I think.
You're like
Given
doing the kind of stuff that people do in LA, just in London, like those 3-hour writing sessions and stuff like that, where like they get a bunch of people in a room and try to make a song.
Yeah,
And how do you like that?
depends what role I'm brought in as.
Uh-huh. What are you usually brought in to do?
Producer, producer writer. Producer writer is definitely the shittest job out of all of them.
How so?
Like in the three, if you've got the artist, the top liner, and the producer, I would definitely. I think I well, yeah, I would like to be the top liner if the producer can write as well,
Mm,
because um, just because, say for instance, and this is what I was doing, like last year, I would have 2, if not 3 sessions a day, and they were all for major record label artists, and all of them were expecting finished tracks at the end of the day. But say, for instance, I start a session at 9 a.m., and this is all over Zoom as well, so it was like really bad. I would start at 9 a.m., and then I'd go from 9 a.m. to midday, and I would expect to have written and produced a song in that time. Then, then I'd be doing another one from like 1 till 5 or something. And then most of the time I ended up doing meetings or like seminars or things like that in the evening. And then and then the label was like, "Where's the track?" And then I'm like, well, I didn't like, because in their mind they were like, you were only in the session from 9 till 12. Why didn't you spend 12 till 6 p.m. mixing? And it's like, well, because then I was in another session directly after that, and it was just like that every single day. But I ended up having like such severe burnout that I
I'm
just quit
sure.
music completely for July and August last year.
You said I've had enough. That's it.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just literally not doing this. And then the only way I got back into it was because I ended up working this band called Second Thoughts. Um, and then I just sort of was like, actually, no, I like music. And then I got back into it.
Do you think it's like it's interesting? I believe it or not, I posted an Instagram reel with a former guest, Richie Beretta, talking about how he got so sick of like the kind of like pop scene that he's not working on that stuff anymore. Like, making content for content's sake or whatever. And then what's his name? Oh man, this is embarrassing that I'm forgetting his name on the air. But one of the bigger mixers.
No,
We'll
like,
make an edit here. Yeah, Tony Maserati
oh yeah, okay.
comes in. He's like, yeah, that's definitely true. But I've also mixed like some of the best songs that were made in 3 hours. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, can you make like the best quality stuff in 3 hours, or is it not enough, or does it sometimes work? Like, what are your thoughts on like the speed of in which people are like doing these songs?
Yeah, you definitely can. I don't
Yeah,
doubt it. Oh, I, like, I think that there's a different. I think you can write an incredible song in 3 hours. I think that sometimes, like, to get the production, the mixing right, that does take longer. Like, to find the nuance of what can complement the writing. But I don't know. I've just heard when you're in the flow, you're in the flow. It's basically the equivalent of, like, I think you can write a song and produce it in 3 hours, and it can be really good when it's just that every light is green. Like, some sessions, every light is green. Sometimes some of them are amber for a bit, and then you go through. Some of them are just red. Like at each decision making point. But yeah, I think you can write really good stuff really quick.
yeah. It's like what are what's it called? Yes, and you,
Mm.
not freestyle, but with comedians. You know what I'm talking about. My brain's
Yeah,
just totally fried because
yeah,
it's late.
same.
Improv. You know, when
Oh,
when
you
you
just want, okay, yeah, 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 yeah.
when you're doing improv, they just the key to doing improv well is yes and, right. So like,
Mm.
oh yes, whatever you said, however ridiculous it was, absolutely, and also this,
Yeah,
and so like it seems like that's also definitely a vibe and a way to get into it.
hugely. I
Do
think,
you
yeah, it's just flow.
do you find yourself more of a songwriter or more of a producer in these sessions? Like, do you like when or and also slash like how does one inform the other?
I would say in my heart I'm a songwriter, but I definitely am hired as producer more. Um, just because there aren't as many, and also because I'm not a cis man, I extra get hired more as a producer. Um, so that's quite nice. I think for me, this Christmas period is going to be really important because I felt quite out of the loop working with Gary and then the pandemic, um, for what was contemporary, what was fresh, what was happening. And then getting to work with, I literally just almost exclusively work with viral TikTokers now that I think are really good. Like, and so I'm on the newest wave of like everything that's happening, and I'm really enjoying getting to go in the studio and actually write and create and produce stuff that I think is good. And also, like, I'm never someone that follows a trend, but good stuff sounds good, right? Like,
Yeah, if it sounds good, it is good.
yeah,
So
so that
it's so funny to hear you say the way that like the record labels are like basically signing people that are blowing up on TikTok. It's like what everyone talks about.
mm,
Is that it,
that's just literally what's happening.
they don't have a better guesstimate as to what's happening in the real world other than TikTok, I guess. That's like
Well, it we've just had the golden era of TikTok, and it's now on the decline.
right.
I'd say TikTok is not as informative to what's going on as it has been. Um, but effectively, the reason why it was logical to sign things that had gone viral was because things could used to only go viral because they were good. It could only go viral because people liked it and shared it and wanted to see it. Like, so it was a pretty safe bet to do it. And I think all of the musicians that I've worked with that have gone viral, are incredible musicians, and they've only gone viral because they were making good content to start with.
Hmm.
So like that's how I see it.
Amazing. Awesome.
That's not necessarily the same for everyone else, but that's just the ones that I have chosen to work with. Is I've seen their
Yeah.
musicality outside of their virality.
Yeah. Embrace it. Yeah, that's
Mm.
super cool. I feel like, yeah, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't know. Like, I feel like it was nice when record labels took chances on artists also, that wouldn't, maybe weren't going viral. But like, also TikTok is like a very specific thing. Like, I don't think it lends itself to all genres, all kinds of medium. Like, it's
No,
like, because it's so like, it's so hyper and fast. And like, that's why it works so well for comedy, but it doesn't, like, my Instagram reels do really well on Instagram, but they totally tank on TikTok because like, it's longer-ish form, like informative content. It's not like quick, grabby, kind of like comedic stuff. So I feel like there's definitely stuff that gets missing with the TikTok thing. But on the other hand, pop, especially for pop music, makes sense.
yeah. Well, I just think everything hits a little bit differently depending on what you're going for. But I also find it funny, like the concept of TikTokers, because like you don't say Spotifyers, they're just artists on Spotify. Like you don't say like Instagrammers, you just say artists. Like, but for
Right.
some reason, TikTokers are not regarded as artists; they're regarded as TikTokers. It's like such a weird, and
We
I
need
think
it.
it's a bitterness that I think people can see from TikTok being like the biggest platform. And if you're not big on TikTok, you have like a bitterness towards it.
Yes. It's just a bunch of us old geezers like realizing that we're getting old. So don't worry
I
about it.
mean, I'm not viral on TikTok. Like,
Yeah, but you're a bit younger than me, so you're more your hand is on the pulse a bit more than I maybe mine is, you know.
no. I mean, to be honest, I see the negative side of it mostly because my best friends are all really famous on TikTok. So like, I see
The
the horrible,
downsides.
horrible, like the most horrific stuff I've seen is the hate that they get. Like
Trolling.
the worst on TikTok than anything
Mm,
else. Like one of the artists I work with ended up having a case study done on her because of the level of the visceral like hatred that is, and for literally no reason, like for her being a woman is like
yeah.
a lot
Uh,
of the reason.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, there's so much
Yeah.
that the internet brings out the worst of people often. Sometimes the
Yeah.
best, but I guess it's like the real world, but like on crack or something. It brings out the best and
Well, they
worst.
just have no accountability, right? So
Yeah,
they don't care. Like,
that is true. Yeah. Well, let's dig into your approach to music production. Like, what does your workflow look like when you're starting one of these sessions or working with an artist? Like, what's the first thing you do?
talk for 3 hours. Honestly, like if it's a new artist that haven't worked with before, I'll get to know them like really well before a session. Because I find it helps inform the decisions. Oh, sorry. I find it helps inform the decisions that you make throughout it. If you know what genre they want, if you know what energy they want, if you know what headspace they're in, it means that when you put the suggestion forward, it's going to be the right one. You're going to have a lot more green lights and a lot rather than a lot of amber lights of contemplating if it's the right decision.
Mm,
So for me, yeah, I like talk to the artist for ages. I'm a guitarist as my like thing, so I naturally always pick up a guitar and want to play from there. But it really depends on what the other artists can play or what they feel comfortable with or what genre they really want to work in. And then just kind of build up the track from that point. But I'm quite keen on getting the chords and the melody down before I'll put a beat. It's just I think I'm going to change that approach now. I'm better at beat making, but like that's how I was before, where I was
yeah,
quite. I want the song to be good, and then we can do the production later.
that's kind of been my approach also, but sometimes I question that approach as well. So,
I think I've started questioning it after seeing the artists I work with all do beats first,
mm,
and then seeing how successful all of their songs are.
I guess maybe a drum beat is more of a green light than a chord progression for many people. You know?
Yeah, I actually think I think a beat with a bass line is more of a green light. It depends on the genre. That's specifically for when I'm saying that though. I do specifically mean upbeat music, but like slow music, it's always instrument and vocals to get the tone, and then you build up the atmos around it.
Mm. Nice. So usually starting off with getting the chord progression in, figuring out the melody, and then building around it. Or now we're gonna maybe start doing like getting the beats and the bass first, and then upbeat style. What comes next? Like I don't know.
It
Any thought processes that happen in a session, like things that are trying to like anything that you do to kind of I guess keep those green lights going. I like the way
yeah,
you put it. Like you're trying to get that virtuous cycle of creativity.
yeah, just like we just want to get the flow going. It depends how many people are in the session. So if I'm the producer and there's a top liner and the artist, when we've got the melody and the chord progression in a comfortable space, I will then put my headphones on, build up the track from that point, and then I will leave the top liner and the artist to work on the concept. So like, because obviously you need like lyrics to make sense, they need to mean something. So if I'm yeah, if there is someone else in the room, I will let them do that, even though I can write lyrics and I do write lyrics. If it's me and the person, I'll spend more time working on the concept before I'll do the production, and then I have to do the fastest production I've ever done in my life, so that the artist isn't bored sitting in the back of the room. Because that's the big thing. You don't want a bored artist in your session,
Yeah,
um, and often they just are bored because production takes a minute. I like to
yeah.
sound.
That sounds stressful. But
How
it
do you?
sounds like what?
Oh, sorry. How do you work
Well,
with
I don't
artists?
do those kinds of sessions. I usually work with singer songwriters, and so we build out the track together. So it's a very different kind of vibe. It's more like, okay, let's really learn your song, and also talking about what they like, and what they're trying to do with their goals, all that stuff. But yeah, like usually it's just me and the artist together, just building up the track, figuring out the chord progression, changing up the chords, maybe building out a structure, and then seeing what we're inspired by, maybe what kind of drum beat, similar situation. But it's not. I'm not usually shuffling with three other people. It's not like
Mm,
it's not that kind of a vibe. It's just me in my house in the spare bedroom, making music with one person.
yeah, no. I mean, to be honest, like when I'm working with independent artists, that's always how it is. Like it's a like we're just gonna make something that feels really comfy and something that feels really nice. Um, Especially because a lot of the time singer-songwriters have slower tempo music and things like that. It's when I'm working with the pop and dance people, that's when it's like, okay, here we go. We need to get it done now.
But do you find like in the stress you're able to kind of like come up with like creative parts? Does it help you? Like, does it like activate a certain part of your brain?
Yeah, I mean, you're forced to just make a good decision. Like, but forced to make decisions based on if you think they're good or not. You can't deliberate and maybe mess around with it a bit longer. Like, I mean, if you just change this chord, it's like, does this feel good? Yes or no? No, let's do something else. Like, let's do something else. Let's do something else. Like, you just like you mill through loads of ideas until you find something that you sit on, and then that's the thing that then starts locking in. Or at least for me, that's how it
Yeah,
starts.
yeah. It's the commitment mentality. It's so interesting how like some songs can come together so fast and some so slow, and like artists can deliberate so much on one one chord or like anything, and like people could make the best songs in like 2 seconds without overthinking anything. You know?
Yeah, but I think the key thing is the same artist could make a song in 3 hours that would be the same artist that took a week to deliberate over the same chord. I don't think it's artist specific. I think it's song specific. I think some songs happen, some songs take longer.
Hmm.
Like, um, at least from experience.
Some songs are out there in the ether, and other songs you have to kind of
Yeah,
mine
some of them,
mine for.
like some of them are in the room already, and you're just putting it into a computer.
Yeah.
Some songs, yeah, they're taking a while to come back home before you can put them into the
Yeah,
computer.
they're lost at the at the convenience store,
Yeah, exactly.
deliberating which soft drink to buy or whatever.
They're stuck behind a red light
Yeah,
of
stuck
someone
behind someone
else.
else's. Yeah, they got stuck in an accident in the traffic jam. Um, Amazing. Well, I noticed. I was trying to like hear like something through in like all the songs that you sent me. Your production reel, and like they're all so different. I guess the only thing I felt was similar was like I guess really catchy melodies and like relatively loud and beefy bass parts. Like, what's your approach to bass? Are you a bass player? Like, I know you said you're a guitarist, but like, are you also a bass player? Like, is live
I
bass
am
playing a big
a
part of
bass
what you do?
player. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's a really interesting takeaway. Bass is my favorite thing to
All
play.
right. Say I'm a bass player, so same.
Ah, they God, it's a very I feel like I'm in a very frustrating place with pipeline releases because and I know a lot of producers and writers are in this. I've got a list longer than my like Spotify, whatever of tracks that I'm waiting to come out, and it's like that. So, like, there's some tracks with like the sickest bass lines on them,
Nice.
and or, like just like some of the most proud songwriting I've ever done. And it's like it's really difficult because I just know some of them are just never going to get released, and it's not because they're not good or anything. It's just like the artist has taken a different stylistic direction, or he'll get used in 3 years' time when they decide to revisit it and or they want to sell it to somebody else. Like it's a really weird thing knowing that you're just sitting on this overflowing nest of golden eggs, like
Yeah.
that aren't gonna hatch. Like
Nice. That's
uh,
hard.
mm, it is. When I was doing when I was working with independent artists, everything got released because the artists were only recording to release stuff.
Yeah.
But now, like working with majors, you write stuff to see if it might be good. Like it's just a different ball game completely. I mean,
Yeah.
something I find really funny is so something I did loads when I was with Gary is I just wrote generic backing tracks, but for like full songs, middle eights, choruses, and then I would do things with like guide melodies in it and like guide concept, lyrics or whatever. Um, and there was one the other day where I was on my way to a Maida Vale session with Piri and Tommy, and then I just got an email from Universal being like, "Oh, by the way, you wrote." I don't know if you know who Mark Owen is, but he was in Take That.
Hmm.
Um, it was like you wrote Mark Owen's single that's out today, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, like okay, I did that then." And I was like, "Oh, I'll have a listen to it." It's so funny, like. I wrote that backing track like 2 years ago, or maybe even 2.5 years ago, and then just for it to be released on a Monday, like
Yeah.
on my way to some other thing. Like it's just
It sounds like that's gonna start
that,
happening a lot for you based on what you're telling me.
yeah. I feel like that is like I just suddenly get told like, oh, by the way, that track's coming out next week. I had that the other day. A track came out like yesterday. There was one point where I had two tracks on the same day that the Mark Owen thing out. I also had a track on New Music Friday as well. Like it was just like, oh, cool. Like
I guess this really speaks to the importance of quantity over quality, or even like quantity leads to quality. Like
Mm,
when you put in that many reps, you probably get so good at producing. First of all, you make enough records that some of them are going to land, and like there you go. Like you're having things that are charting, going on the radio, with writing credits. Like just because you did so many, like and
yeah.
and now you have skills to just freaking go for it. You've built up those 10,000 hours so fast. Or
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years, so I genuinely think it would be at 10,000 hours, but I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes in because I'm like, why am I such a shit producer? It's like it's like genuinely what goes through my head. And the problem is because I'm now working with all of these TikTokers who have got the cocky arrogant. Well, sorry, no, the opposite. I was about to say the confident naivety is genuinely what I meant to say. Of when I was 21.
yeah,
That's what I was like to the people who were in their late 20s, early 30s. And I didn't think anything of it. And now I'm seeing it. I'm like, fuck, I wish I had that
yeah,
confidence. It's like, there's nothing to stop myself from doing it. And that's why, like, today, just bashing out a load of these tracks was really good for me, even though I'm actually really, really ill. My throat hurts so much.
oh, sorry.
Uh,
Sorry for dragging you out on the mic today. Um,
but it's good. It's good.
but yeah, no, it's really interesting, the imposter syndrome thing. But I think first of all, I know your production is good because I've heard them. But I think the reason why we think we suck, I think so much, and this is like the best theory I can come up with, is we just know ourselves so intimately that like when we do something, we recognize that that's a pattern that's similar to something else that we did. It's like, ugh, I'm so boring. I'm doing the same thing again, or like, because for us, it's like this is what's in our head, anyways, and so like it just feels like too familiar, too typical, and then other people don't know you though. Like that's the thing. Like nobody else can play. Like no one else can play the bass like me. Even if I'm bored of my own bass playing, what seems very natural and like almost like banal to me is not necessarily that to somebody else because they're not in my brain. They don't know what's going through my head. And so for them it's like, oh, that's a nice bass part, and like they're not overthinking what I'm overthinking, I don't know if that resonates with you.
No, I think it's a good perspective. I haven't really spoken about it that much, so I think it's an interesting concept because I'm just like, God, what I did was so basic, and then it's like, yeah, literally just as you said, it's not necessarily basic. It's just that you knew what you were going to do, so it seems predictable.
Yeah. Have you
But
tried I have there's like these like prompts by what's his name? Like Brian Eno. There's like all kinds
oh
of
yeah,
stuff
I've
to
seen
kind of like
this.
get you out of your head or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest way for me to get out of my head is just to do it. Like, I think I've been watching all of these other producers like just smash out tracks all the time, and then I've just been on the road being like, oh, I wish I was in my studio. Like, oh,
So
I
it's like
wish I,
it's a combination of imposter syndrome and FOMO.
yeah. But the thing is, though, wouldn't change the fact that I went on tour at all. I don't, I just literally would not be in the place I'm in right now if I hadn't gone on these tours because I learned so much and
Yeah.
got some really good samples.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, and everything we do is a culmination of everything, we've done, right? Like I did this like forum chat with Andrew Murray and Jesse Ray Ernster, who are big pop mixers. Um and they were saying like, I don't know, when when I was, cleaning toilets at, that's I don't even know if they said that. There was something that they did. There's like that was part of me becoming a better mixer, even though it had nothing to do with mixing. Like I was, writing songs with this person. That helped me become a better mixer because now I know songs and how they should feel more. Like anything could like lead you to be anything and it's something that's like somewhat related, you know. Even, if you have a job like at a restaurant and you're a waiter or whatever and you have like time to kill while you're like, cleaning dishes or something, then that could be time for your mind to wander and think about things that you want to do. And so, we're the cumulative, I'm not making any sense tonight because I'm just tired. But we are everything that we've done. That cumulative experience is going to inform what we do next, so to speak.
100%. I mean, I completely agree. I just don't like, I think also something that I think is a really weird, I don't know if it's like this in America, but, or like any other countries, but in the UK, you're very looked down upon if you also aspire to be an artist. Like, it's like, no, you're a songwriter producer or like whatever. It's cringe if you're also trying to be an artist because unless you are famous as an artist and you're doing writing production, it's like a massive social taboo to like also be an artist, like an aspiring artist on top of that. It's a really weird,
Hmm. That
I
does
don't know,
sound unique to the UK, but
like there's times
The
where
UK
like
UK's musical culture is different than a lot of other countries. Like I've been to the UK twice, and like I don't know, I just feel like also like all my favorite bands are British, like Radiohead, the Beatles, like you name it,
mm,
British. You know what I mean? But like there's something in the culture that's like super, that's like pumped up about music specifically. I think in England, and so maybe that has something to do with like, you know, you know, an artist or maybe it's just like the British Industrial Revolution thing of like this is your job. I don't know. Could be
oh God,
anything.
I don't know. It is just a weird thing. I think it's because it's like cringe is the only way I can describe it. Like that's the energy that people have where like if a producer has an artist project that isn't doing very well, people find it cringy and they don't necessarily even like it can make people not even like I've seen people not work with people because of it. I've seen people not get hired as a producer. I've seen people not get hired. Like one of the studios I did a interview for was like, are you an artist? Because then it found out later that if you said yes, you weren't going to get hired. It's really like it's
That's
really mad
interesting.
how hardline it is. It's like you're a producer or you're an artist. And then you can only be a producer if you're a famous artist.
Oh, once you become Gary Barlow,
Yeah, then you're allowed to be a producer.
then you're allowed to be a producer.
Mm,
Do you aspire to be an artist, or is that not important?
I don't mind. Like, um, I had an artist project. I've had like loads of artist projects. The reason why I brought it up actually was because I felt like some of the most useful things that have ever translated into my songwriting, production, MDing is because I have toured, because I have done sessions in front of scary people, because I've done all of these things. It informed me so heavily, like as in like being on the artist side of it, it informed so heavily on what I wanted to do to make it better for an artist. Because
Yeah.
until you're an artist, you don't know how horrible it is to work with some people with certain conditions.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That makes a lot of sense. I don't envy artists. I that seems it just seems like a like as tough as our industry is, it's like so much tougher because
yeah,
you're being scrutinized even more, you know, it's just much harder to make it and you have to spend so much more money on people like us and promotion and everything in between.
I know. I mean, something I like creating stuff for an artist project. Like, I don't think I would have been able to do half the stuff that I've done if I didn't have my own artist project in mind as a motivator. So I think making stuff just for the sake of making stuff for me is not a strong enough motivator. I want to make something with the intention of it being released. And then I can hear what it will sound like on Spotify. I can hear what it will sound like on the radio if I think it's going to get released. Um, but then I also have other projects that are like, I don't want anyone to hear them. Like, no one can hear this. And that also has a very special place. But then again, that's like an artist project. So I think I think having an artist vibe it can be really beneficial for the individual. It's just for some reason the UK attitude in the music industry is a bit harsh towards
Interesting.
non-famous artists.
Okay. This is the first time learning about this, so
I
everybody.
mean, maybe I've just had a terrible
No, no,
sleep.
no. No, but that's cool. Like it's important to know, I guess, if you're in England and you don't want to be cringed out or whatever.
Yeah.
Wait, so I want to get back to your bass playing. Like, I don't know, what do you have like a favorite bass, like a favorite, I don't know, chain or synth basses or anything? Like, what's your jam?
Yeah, I mean, a P bass through a Sans amp, right?
Fair
You're
enough.
laughing.
Yeah, all good.
I mean, like honestly, like maybe 70% of the tracks that I've recorded are literally through my like 180 pound Ibanez bass. Like it's like blue. Like that's how so many of the bass lines have been recorded until I
Oh,
got jazz P
like the
bass.
like those like metal kind of basses,
Yeah, yeah, like
like
proper like
beginner metal basses.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Hey, those they sound a lot like P basses, some of them.
Yeah,
So,
I mean the one that I had, I really liked. I got it, it wasn't assembled. My dad had to put the neck on it,
oh,
when
that's
I was
fun.
like 14 or something.
Yeah,
So
amazing. And I guess what's your approach to guitars? Like as a guitarist, like what are how are you recording guitars these days?
I have a little I mean, I always DI. I'm gonna be real. I DI. Amplitude's really good. I have a little blues baby with a 57, and then I have a Fender thin line Telecaster, which is nice, and then also this Strat, which is nice. Um, and then I have a Taylor 414 acoustic guitar, which is really nice, which I like tracking through. And then I'll just mic that up. But if I'm
Yeah,
completely honest, I'll just whack my Telecaster into my Arrow almost all of the time, and then I'll just whack it down, and then I'll just do stuff in post. Really,
yeah. DI guitars. You don't need it much more.
no, it depends. If I so that depends. So that's production. If I'm doing like ad prod or building tracks, I will do it like that. If I'm recording bands, because I work with a lot of indie bands, we'll hire a bigger studio and we'll do like proper guitar tracking, like spend hours getting the mics right, like to get the take right. It depends on the project. It depends if it's rock indie or if it's pop indie. It changes what I do.
Amazing. Do you do mixing as well? Like where does the like where does your roles begin and where do they end?
I do mix.
Yeah. Awesome. You want to talk about
I don't.
we
Yeah,
got to get a
no,
little
I
bit
don't.
into the technical, it's Secret Sonics.
Yeah. No, I currently I mix like I have to mix all the demos, so I mix all the demos. Um, but I also mix all of the independent artists I work with. Personally, don't like mixing. If I can avoid it, I will send it off to somebody else. Uh, which I do way more now. Also because it's nice to be able to have a network of people. Like for instance, one of the tracks I needed to mix that I actually really wanted to mix, I just couldn't. Like I was literally on the road, and I was like, I would do a disservice to you if I mix this just through headphones. Like it needs to be like with a van or like I was in a bus, like just the sound of a tour bus like the whole time. So I was like, I'm gonna have to outsource the mixing, even though I want to do it. And then it was really nice actually because the mix engineer was like, um there's nothing really to mix on this. Like there's maybe to take out some frequencies and stuff. And I was like, ah, good. Like,
Mission accomplished.
yeah. No, I like it in a nerdy way, but I think the imposter syndrome thing comes in. But I've literally mixed hundreds of unreleased tracks. 100 released tracks. Like
Hmm.
everything that's out is usually mixed. Like I didn't mix the Gary Barlow one, but practically everything else, other than the Ellie Dixon one, and I don't know.
So are you mixing as you're producing? Are you mixing at the end? Do you have like a
yeah,
template
mixing is
set
like
up?
producing, and so if I've produced it, I will mix it within the project that I produced it in, and I'll bip some stuff, but
Hmm.
I won't go to. I'm not gonna bounce out loads of stuff, re-import it. Like I mix within the project that I did it in, but I'll make a project alternative as well before I decide messing with it.
Yeah.
I also get hired as a mix engineer independently, so that's when I get the stems through, and I much prefer mixing within that capacity because I'm not blinded by what I've already done
Yeah. Yeah.
in the production. I just get to hear the track clearly and then just sort of go from there. So like yeah, that's kind of my process really. It's a lot of it is feeling its way through. Um I'd never learned how to do anything. I like just did it from vibes, and that does mean I have gaps in my knowledge, but no,
Hmm.
like everyone seems to be happy with their releases, so
Yeah.
I don't think it's that bad.
No, no, no.
Uh,
I'm sure it's great. Yeah, I guess like the biggest thing we have is like to get good at mixing is to have like that discography in our head of like what things sounded like that we loved and resonated with, and like being able to reference that, you know, or like know what a sound should sound like, based on the records that you grew up listening to, and
yeah,
loved.
that is the benchmark. I mean, like when I first started producing, I didn't know what compression was. So I didn't use it. So what I did was I automated every single
Yeah.
syllable of the wave to effectively do manual compression across the vocals on everything, and like across anything. I would do like if you looked at the volume automation data of my projects, and honestly, I think they sounded better than when I started using compression.
Yeah.
Like because it was so detailed. But I was like, God, this saves hours. Just put a
Yeah.
compressor.
Yeah, there's that's a whole discussion, in and of itself, of like some people not being as into compression and just clip gaining every like little moment in a vocal track. Like there's a mixer in LA named John Castelli who does that. Is like less into compression. Yeah, I find, and sometimes like some artists, some producers that I mix for, like they just want to hear things more transparently, and it's like, why am I even compressing? Like I should just clip gain this.
Yeah.
And then you have to find like the more transparent compressors, like the VCA style instead of like an 1176, or figure out like I have all these ways of like massaging vocals to try to make them sound less compressed but still compressed, because it's just
Mhm.
yeah. And that was the first thing I did also, was just automate every single moment in a vocal, but
Yeah.
that's not really scalable.
No, it definitely works with the acoustic singer-songwriter stuff though. When I got into pop though, I noticed that my vocals were really landing flat compared to like the other producers. And then I realized it was because they were using like the most extreme compression you ever heard. Like, I mean, one of my quickest tips when I'm doing production, like production sessions and I need to mix the vocals, I just put the Devil Lock by Sound Toys, the Lock Deluxe on the vocal on just the preset default thing it starts on. Your vocals literally instantly sound like Upsoul. Like, yeah, it's straight in there. You know what I
But
mean?
you got to
Like,
disable the noise, right?
yeah, I mean, well, it depends what you're going for. If you're going for an edgy pop track, I'm not joking.
Yeah, yeah,
I did say the Devil Lock, right? Not the Decapitator.
yeah, yeah. The Devil Lock.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, adds
But
a
it
little
has
bit.
this like built-in hiss on like I mixed a few like live sessions that had this crazy hiss, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and the mastering engineer even took out some of it. Turned out it was it was just Devil Lock default hiss.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, dangerous. It's a dangerous
Yeah.
plugin, but it sounds great.
But again, I wouldn't use that for the release track. That was just to get the
The vibe
vocal
going.
good in the session. Like, here's some stuff. Here's some compression. And then also a really good one I got, which is from Fred again, is this auto tune that is so good for just tracking vocals because I mean, I'm sure there's other ones that do it, but it's free. And it's live auto tune. So like 'cause Logic Preset 1 and stuff has got latency. Oh, sorry. But this one,
There's a free live autotune
yeah,
by Antares or however it's pronounced.
it's not by Antares, it's by it's not M Audio, something else. I can look this up if you want. I'm scared to open Logic.
Oh, don't open it. Okay, fair. Well,
Yeah.
you'll have to send me that. Send me a link after the episode.
Yeah.
So I think now's a good time to head over to the Sauce segment so people kind of hear what we've been talking about. So you sent me this track called "Let's Get Drunk" by Gary Barlow. So let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds, and we'll chat about it. Sound cool?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Awesome. All right, so I'll listen in real time and then edit it in. Yeah, Charlie, it sounds awesome. Once again, I love the bass. The bass is totally killer. Yeah, it sounds awesome. Yeah, it's a great track. Tell me a little bit about what went into that song.
Well, I think, yeah, I'm gonna out myself a little bit, but I effectively I did do with the track. But do you know the plugin Arcade by Output?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't used it, but I know of it.
Sick. Well, it has really good loops in it and really good like chordal progressions and everything. And there was a really nice piano chord progression that was in it, and I was like, oh, this is really nice chord progression. I'm not a very good pianist, and all of Gary's songs are on piano, not guitar. So I'm gonna have a little smash at this. And then I just built up the track using that chord progression. And then it changes chords and stuff like later on in the song, but like that initial like ba 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 ba, you will be able to find that on Splice. Sorry, on Arcade. But we re-recorded all of it, and then an actual pianist came in called Malcolm, and he was amazing, and he mixed it up a little bit and changed it. But effectively, yeah, it was working on that, and I actually played the bass line on a ukulele bass to try and get a more double bass kind of tone, especially in the intro, like the boom 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 is all on uke bass, which I really like. And then I can't take credit for all of the bass drops because I'm pretty sure it's Guy Pratt, I think that's his name, came in and blew my mind on how to play bass. He's just like, oh my god, just like the best bass player I've ever seen in real life. And he put the bass licks that you can kind of hear like later on in the song, like in the last chorus and stuff. But effectively, yeah, like I built up that track with Gary, and then we worked on the top line together. I remember sitting in my little studio instead of his studio, and him sitting with me as we were like going through parts of the track and things like that, which was really nice. And it was quite a cool thing because I didn't think that was necessarily going to make the album because he didn't do that many co-writes. Like he only did co-writes with people who featured on like Michael Bublé and stuff like that, like people who actually featured on the album. So it was really nice to have my little name like as a songwriter, as listed as the first songwriter as well. It's probably just do with people's last names, and mine being D puts me quite high up at the top. But no, B, I'm above Gary. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so it was a really interesting process. I mean, we went through so many iterations. Another producer as well, who works with the F9, like he is F9, got involved as well, and Ryan, who's the mix engineer, he wrote the amazing chords in the middle eight where it gets all like jazz stuff like that. So it was a collaborative process, but for me it was quite amazing because that ended up getting on the album, and then the album went to number one. So then that inadvertently means that I have a number one, which is quite funny that it's Gary Barlow. Out of everything that I've done, like all of the indie artists, like all of that, like other pop artists, it's Gary Barlow is the one that pushed through for me.
Yeah, listen, you got to go with the establishment acts. It's the way to do it.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun because when I was producing effectively the backing for that track, because that's kind of the main thing that I did, I wasn't expecting anything. Like I made like so many of these backing tracks that I didn't necessarily know what was going to happen with them. For then to make that album was just a really mad feeling. And I really like the song. I listened to it for the first time in a really long time the other day, and I was like, you know what? This is all right. This is an all right song.
Yeah, it's a vibe. Yeah, it's definitely like in that what's kind of in vogue with like Dua Lipa kind of thing and like,
Oh, she was the biggest influence on the track.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
as in like sound.
like new disco pop
Mm.
thing, which is totally in vogue and yeah, I love I love that stuff that those grooves and the bass, it's great. So
Yeah.
awesome, congrats. Anything else in terms of like the actual production that maybe you'd want to like tell the listeners about that was maybe an interesting like technical thing or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, all of the strings are actually like 38-piece orchestra. It's not samples. Like we actually went to British Grove and recorded all of the string samples, like string parts, and got them arranged and everything. And it was actually not the first time that one of my string arrangements had been done. In I mean, I can't take credit for the final string arrangement, but it was some of the strings that I had programmed, and then they got interpolated into like the strings that ended up being on the track.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it did feel amazing to hear a song that I've written being played through the massive British Grove studio speakers with like everyone there and an entire orchestra playing like the parts and everything. So that, it's high quality stuff
Yeah,
on
how do
that
you have
track.
imposter syndrome after something like that? That's crazy. So,
I guess I don't know.
I'm just
I just don't. I
I'm not
just
trying to I'm
yeah,
not trying to invalidate it. I'm just saying like you should feel proud of yourself and you know use that
yeah.
as power to overcome the imposter syndrome, so to speak.
I don't know. I've had people say mean stuff to me, and I think I'm just really sensitive.
Makes for good record producers to be sensitive. With
Yeah.
sensitivity is important.
It is.
Amazing. What?
I don't
Sorry.
know. I completely agree. I think sensitivity is like one of the most important things because music is just about helping people create what they want to create, and you just have to be completely in tune with what people
Yeah.
want from a song.
Yeah, I think like it's an emotional intelligence thing. Like I think I have good emotional intelligence and I think that's been like my biggest asset as like a producer because it's
Mm,
like I can kind of sense what the artist is going through or if they're feeling one way or another and like and that's just like that's like so important when you're in a room with somebody.
hugely,
Yeah.
hugely.
So being a sensitive person part of is a good thing I think for what we're
Hmm.
doing.
Yeah, and just the haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate. Totally. Sorry to bring it back into that world, but I'm just anyways, it's an amazing feat, especially like how young you are, like what you've accomplished. It's pretty amazing. Um yeah. Uh moving on from the sauce segment because I know you're a little bit under the weather, so we want to try to wrap soon. Um I actually might have had one more question um that I is now escaping me. All right, we're gonna wrap it based on your vocal cords and stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
All good. Yeah, but anyways, I like to ask everybody some more generalized questions, not necessarily only the technical and the working with people, but we all have days where we're super pumped to get in the studio and we just want to do our work. But there's days that we're, a little bit less jazzed sometimes. How do you kind of either overcome that, or do you have any routines, habits that keep you psyched to get in the studio and do the things that you're doing?
If I'm completely honest, I don't go into the studio when I don't feel like it. I know that's not what people say. Like, people are like, oh, you need to force yourself to do it. You need to push through. It's all about routine. I have quite severe ADHD. And if I don't want to do something, I'm only going to get upset if I'm sat here and I can't do it. So I am the kind of person that on creative days, if I'm not feeling creative, I will just do something else. That might even be playing a computer game instead of writing a song. And the reality is, I like for the people that know me personally, they know I completely overwork. Like what? So it's like 8:30 p.m. on a Monday night, and I'm still in the studio after writing a whole EP, after having a meeting with a massive MD and my management, and also working with an artist in the morning. Like,
And you're ill.
and I'm ill. But yesterday, I ended up canceling a session just because I was like, that's this is actually the first session I've ever cancelled in this way. But I was just too ill. I was just like, I just can't do this. I'm not feeling it. But normally, whenever I have a client in, that always gets me in the studio. And because I mostly work with clients, I'm usually in the studio all the time. But on the days where I've set aside creation and I don't feel like doing it, I just don't make myself do it. And then what happens is usually in the evening after I've had a nice day of eating and playing games, I'm like, oh, I'm going to pick up the guitar. Like I make sure that I have stuff to do music if I want to do it available, but I will not force myself to go to the studio if I don't want to. It's controversial, but like I just don't. And it's ridiculous because I pay for it and everything. But I'm just like, I
Yeah.
will have a sad time if I go in, I think. So I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
it.
No, it's good. It's a healthy mindset. Do you have like any like habits, routines to keep you like, I don't know, zen, in a flow, or it's just you just seem to have a natural inclination to want to be working on music?
I think I'm just like overly obsessed with working. Like, I mean, something we haven't touched on at all is that I also run a production company called the Trans Creative Collective. On top of all of this, which
Give
uses
us
up
a
so
pitch.
well. I like to do a production company that was set up by me and my friend Max, and then there's now a bigger team that involves a lot of people. And we have a directory. So if you want to find people who are maybe more in your flow of types of people, because our whole thing is inclusive, not exclusive. So you are welcome to put yourself on the directory if you would like to be, even though we are called the Trans Creative Collective. Our whole thing is integration, and we want everyone to mingle with each other and everyone have a good time. So we have our directory, which you can find anyone who works in film, music, songwriting, management, tattoo artists, anything. Then we also do events where we train up people, do workshops, and do socials because we want people to feel confident and good going into the various fields. And then we also run a consultancy which is a private part of the company, and we go into other people's companies and we basically help them on how to be more inclusive. So yeah,
Nice.
that's kind of what the
That's great.
is.
So
Yeah, we just did a massive collaboration with Absolute Vodka, and do you know Years and Years? They're
no, I've
they're
heard of the
good.
vodka company though. I promise.
Yeah, that's strong. Um, but yeah, so that's yeah, there you go. That's part of the TCC, and we started this year at the beginning of the year. So we just had our end of the year award show, which was a lot of fun.
Amazing. How many people are working for you in this collective?
So there were originally five, and then it grew to 10, and now I think there's 19 or 20 that work within the company. But collectively, the wider group is in the hundreds, and then we have a few thousand followers as well. So it's reached out quite far.
All right. Well, best of luck with your endeavors with this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if you're ever looking to hire a producer or somebody, just look at the TCC directory.
All right. We'll put a link in the show notes below so people can go find that and go check it out. Yeah. All right. Awesome. And I just because the hour's getting late and your voice is slowly. I'm sorry. I've been wearing it out. But I asked this question to everybody who's been on the show. Just kind of looking back on your journey, was there something that you maybe did or didn't do that you'd want to impart on the listener who's maybe more at the beginning of their journey of like, Charlie, that really got you where you wanted to go, or Charlie, don't do. I wish I wish I hadn't done that. It really held me back. What would be that one thing you'd want to impart on the listener?
I think it's so difficult because, as we said earlier, everything is part of your journey. You can never really like do or not do stuff. But what I would say is for the younger people, lean into that naivety, lean into that confidence, get your groundwork in. For people who are older, don't feel self-conscious about being old and doing something. My mum's 52 and she decided during the pandemic that she wanted to be a record producer and songwriter. She's now released 3 albums and she's like winning awards, and she's had a track played on 6 Music. Everything. It's
Wow.
all self-produced and everything.
Go your mom.
Yeah, Telephonics. Check her out. So that you're never too old or too young to do anything. It's literally like we are just humans who are milling about, trying to live our best life. We decided to do music, and so we're doing something a bit different, and it's fun. And just keep enjoying doing that, and make friends with people. Be friendly with everyone, because it's literally all who you know. Literally everything I've ever succeeded is because I knew somebody. So
Yeah. Yeah.
collaborate, make
It
friends.
absolutely is a relationship business. And that's why I love this podcast, is because I get to meet people. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it's just great. Like but before I started meeting people in our industry, I was like intimidated by our industry. And then you
Mm,
start to meet people and you realize how normal and down to earth most people are. Um, and like, yeah, just be, yeah, that relationship thing is so important. And yeah, be good to people. Don't be a dick, as Andrew Sheps bluntly put it on, I think, Working Class Audio back in the day. Yeah, be a good person, be a good hang, that kind of thing.
yeah. I ended up writing uh the title track to a movie because my friend Katie Ray and me were just hanging out, and then this article girly came round, and then she was like, "Oh, I just got asked to this movie pitch. Do you wanna, should we ever go?" We're like, "Okay." So the three of us were just hanging out. We ended up writing it, and then it ended up being the title track for the movie. You know, it's just from having a good time with people.
Was
So
that
yeah, that's just
the what's it called? Um,
how to build a girl.
How to Build a Girl. Yeah, great track. Sounds awesome. Yeah, there you go. You never know where it's gonna go, but yeah, be a good person and hang.
Yeah, literally, and just carry on trying to be good at like stuff. I think people can tell when you're making the effort, rather than people don't like cocky people very much, And you can be confident and enjoy what you're doing and have enthusiasm for it. But I think being like, yeah, I know I'm the shit is like
Less
not.
cool.
People just, yeah, I don't know. It's just nice hanging out with nice people, isn't it? Like you're
Yeah.
so lovely.
Thanks. Likewise. Yeah. Just nice people hanging out, having a chat.
Yeah, exactly. That is literally the music industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's great piece of advice. And yeah, I mean, this is great. Like I learned so much chatting with you, and like you really are an inspiration. Like I'm just like awed at how much you've done in so little time, and also you're a face to people who don't have that so like 15 years ago nobody saw anybody like you, and now you're
Mm.
out there and people can see it and feel like, hey, I can do this too. So yeah, congrats on all of that. So
Thank you.
and
Thanks for inviting me on. It's been a real
yeah,
pleasure. Besides me being like I feel like a deflating balloon throughout this interview.
I think
Um,
we're both like feeling a bit loopy, which is cool. So it'll make for an interesting episode. I'm just exhausted from life and whatever. I'm still I just we had a second child like 5 months ago, and I still not totally sure how I'm going to be awake enough to continue doing this podcast. But I'm just a little bit loopier every episode. So that's
yeah. Oh, well, congratulations.
thank you. But yeah, so it's we just roll with the punches and carry on, But so it'll be a fun loopy episode, and hopefully people will enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, Charlie, thank you so much. Great to meet you, and hope you feel better. And keep in touch.
Thank you very much.